Hey there, how's it going? My name is David and you're watching Kyosho RC. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to what, well, I'm hesitant to call it review because I don't feel I am really that well qualified to review a rally car since I've only got, well, I've got an XV01 and an older TT01 with a rally body on it. So I don't really feel that I'm certainly not an expert or very knowledgeable when it comes to rally cars, so just bear that in mind. This is going to be more of my thoughts and impressions of the FZ02-R, a new rally variant of the Kyosho Fazer Mk2 chassis. So okay, let's start at the beginning. Why would you want to buy a rally car? So if you're like me and you're more buggy centric, what is the appeal of a rally car? What are the benefits? Well, I'd argue that one of the chief benefits of a rally car over, say, any other kind of on-road car is the fact that you can just run it in more different places. If you're lucky and you've got a track nearby, an on-road track nearby, then yeah, you can run just about anything, race cars, Formula 1 cars, anything, because the track is going to be set up for that. But if you're like me and you've got to do most of your running of on-road cars out in the street, the backyard, empty parking lots, car parks, etc., then a rally car has its benefits because those surfaces are very rarely smooth as glass and clean. They've usually got small rocks, pebbles, stones, unevenness, and if you try and run, and back in the early 2000s I did do a lot of on-road running, low down, touring cars, race cars, it's not long before the bottom of the chassis is completely scratched up and the front of the body is all mangled from hitting stones. A rally car should theoretically have better ground clearance. Now I say theoretically because a lot of manufacturers, and particularly Tamiya and also Kyosho with their Fazer Mk2, they stick rally bodies on what are otherwise completely standard road going chassis. And so to my mind, that's a bit like someone buying a standard road car, you know, like for example a Subaru Impreza or something like that, slapping a load of rally stickers on it and then trying to take it into a rally. I mean, it's just not going to end well, is it? It's going to break down and get damaged in short order. And to my mind, a lot of, particularly Tamiya, but also Kyosho, their rally cars are exactly that. It's a rally body on an otherwise standard road going chassis, and so it's not really suited to off-road running. So the Fazer Mk2 has been out for quite a while now, and there are a huge number of variants. There's drift variants, long wheelbase variants, off-road variants. If you're not familiar, it's basically Kyosho's version of Tamiya's TT02. So many different body styles for it. Most of the bodies on the Fazer chassis are so well detailed. Incidentally, you can buy a Fazer Mk2 chassis kit, but the vast majority of Fazers are what Kyosho call their ready set, which is basically Tamiya's equivalent, the equivalent of Tamiya's XB Pro series. And they are more expensive though, considerably more expensive, but whether they're worth the extra money, I guess that's up to the individual. So a Tamiya, for example, a Tamiya TT02 Rally XB would be considerably cheaper than Kyosho's not this one, a non-rally, just a standard Mark II with a rally body on it. But there are a lot of differences. Superficially they're the same: mid-motor mount, shaft driven, four-wheel drive, diffs front and rear, no center diff, no slipper clutch, very little in the way of suspension adjustment from the factory. Most of it is fixed upper arms, fixed steering rods, etc, etc. But there are quite a few meaningful differences, most notably, as far as I'm aware, and if I'm wrong let me know in the comments below, but all of the Fazer Mk2's ready sets come with full bearings, whereas Tamiya's, they don't, it's all bushing, so you've got to swap those out. The controller that you get with the Kyosho ready set, so the ready set comes like the XB Pro series, it comes completely pre-built, electronics installed, battery, all you need is batteries to run, the body's painted, decals are applied. You're good to go. All you need is batteries for the transmitter and the actual chassis. So the controller that you get with the ready set is also a lot nicer than the controller that you get with the XB series. The XB series, I don't want to call it cheap feeling, but the controller is all plastic and it has very little in the way of adjustment, whereas the Kyosho, I can't remember the name of the controller, but it feels a lot nicer in the hand, and it has a lot more controls and adjustments. Overall, it's a much nicer controller. The plastic quality on the kit, again, the Kyosho is much nicer. It's not really high quality, but it's noticeably better than the Tamiya's. And then the Kyosho also has, I believe, metal diff internals. Certainly, I was pulling the gearbox covers off the other day to see how much dust had got in there, and I noticed the ring gears, at least on this rally version, are metal, so I'd imagine the internals are metal as well. Okay, so moving on, what are my thoughts and impressions of the Fazer Mark II Rally? So this is a new rally variation. Like I said earlier, the Fazer Mark II has been out for a while, and they've done rally cars in the past, but like I said before, they were just rally bodies on an otherwise standard Fazer Mark II chassis. In actual fact, I believe some of the rally bodies were actually put on drift cars. I may be wrong about that, but now Kyosho did offer, and I believe they still do, a rally conversion kit that basically does what you'd imagine it to do. It gives you better ground clearance, longer suspension stroke, better dampers with longer stroke, etc., and just basically modifies the standard road going Fazer Mark II to be more suited to off-road. But I believe, and again, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below, I believe that there are a couple of disadvantages to using the rally conversion kit, chiefly being that it uses the rear shock stay and it uses the dampers from the Mad Van, which is itself based on the Fazer Mark II chassis, to get that extra suspension travel. And the downside to that is that with the shock towers being a lot taller than normal, you are kind of limited to what bodies you can put on the car once you've done the rally conversion. So this new Fazer FZ02-R is basically a new iteration of the Fazer Mark II. It's been redesigned, so it's got stiffer lower arms, more robust suspension components. It's got greater suspension travel, stroke. They've done some tuning to get rid of the bump steer. It also includes things like a clear cover that goes over the chassis to keep dust and dirt and debris, water, etc. out of the chassis. It has bigger bore dampers. What else was there? I think they've done some adjustment to the materials used for the pinion gear and the gearing system. I know it's got rubber sealed bearings because I was looking at them the other day. What else is there? There's a few more minor tweaks. There's more information on Kyosho's homepage, so if you're interested, just go and check it out there. Okay, so what's it like? What's it like? Well, like I said at the beginning of the video, I am no rallying expert, so all I can do is compare it to my XV01. Unfortunately, my XV01 is far from standard. It has a lot of Tamiya hop-up options thrown at it, and it's been set up for more on-road use than off-road use. It's got much stiffer suspension, and so it's not really a fair comparison. And most people, if you ask most rally enthusiasts what one of the best RC rallying car chassis available is, and I don't think I'd be wrong in saying most people would answer the XV01. If you're not familiar with the XV01, it's got a front motor mount. The motor is actually in front of the front axles, and it just gives it a very, I don't want to say unique, but it gives it a very different driving feel to most other mid-motor mounted four-wheel drive chassis. It's hard to explain. It's such a nice chassis to work on, although it is typical Tamiya in that it tends to be a lot more complicated than it really needs to be, if you know what I mean. If you build a lot of Tamiyas, you know what I mean. Yeah, it's a wonderful chassis, and so it's not really a fair comparison. And also the XV01, although the actual kit is cheaper than the ready set of the Fazer, by the time you've added electronics and stuff like that, it actually ends up being slightly more expensive. Well, I guess it depends on how much you want to spend on electronics. So how does it compare? Well, I really like the way this Fazer Mark II drives. If you watch the slow motion footage back, you can see it drives very realistically. The body is so nice. The detail on it, it's very scale looking. It's perfectly painted with decals that have been perfectly applied. I must admit, I'm quite jealous. I wish I could do my bodies as good as this one. It's such a nice body. In fact, the only criticism I can level at it is that it doesn't have a driver figure or cockpit. I mean, if it had that, it would just bring the realism up a whole new level. But it handles really good. It's very fast. It's got a 14-turn single brush motor in, which compared to the motor that's in my XV01, which is basically a GT tune from Tamiya, yeah, it's night and day in the speed department. I had to dial back the throttle endpoint a big time in order just to keep up with it when I was filming. It's quick, handles really well, but because it's got softer suspension, really softer suspension, it tends to roll a lot in the corners. The softer suspension and greater ground clearance gave it the advantage when it was off-road. It could go over the rough terrain a lot better than my XV01. It could handle a lot better. It was less upset by sharp rocks or obstacles in its path. The downside was when it came to on-road sections, yeah, as you see in the video, it rolls quite a lot. It looks really good. I mean, it looks really realistic in that regard, but yeah, my XV01 was certainly quicker on the flatter on-road sections, just by virtue of the fact it's got stiffer suspension, and it just handles slightly better, if I'm honest. But yeah, I really like the way the Fazer drove. The servo, if you watch my previous video, I said the servo seemed a bit on the slow side, but once you're driving, no, it's perfectly fine. In fact, again, for filming purposes, I had to dial back the steering dual rates just to keep it manageable, because it tended to change direction very quickly and very easily. No problems during the shakedown run. One very minor annoyance, again related to the body roll, was during cornering on harder surfaces, the body would roll, and as the wheels turned, the body just behind the front wheels would catch on the tire and make this awful sound. I mean, it's very minor. It sounds like I'm harping on about this body roll, but I actually really like it. It gives it a very realistic look to it, and in a lot of ways I find it more, I guess you would say, entertaining to drive than something that has got really stiff suspension and doesn't roll at all. It may not be as fast on harder surfaces, but I don't know, it's just more of an entertaining drive, if that makes sense. And some people commented on the chassis cover, is it effective? It is against larger twigs, sticks, and rocks and stuff, but fine dust, no, it's completely useless. By the time I'd finished my runs, the chassis was just full of dust. So yeah, it helps a little bit, but it's no magic bullet in that regard. If you're concerned about water getting into the electronics, well, the servo is waterproof, and the ESC is basically a rebranded Hobbywing 1060, which is also waterproof. So it's only really the receiver that you've got to worry about in terms of, like, water or something like that. Overall, yeah, I'm really pleased with how well the Fazer drove. It just looks so good. Certainly, I really wish I could get the body on my XV01 looking as good as the body on the Fazer. Would I buy one again? Absolutely, absolutely, without question. Yeah, there are better options. If you're wanting all-out performance, the XV01, the XV02 probably give you the performance edge. But if you're just running around in the backyard, the street, the local car park or whatever, this is more than enough, and I don't think anyone would be disappointed with it. As for durability, well, I've only just started running, so I can't really comment, but it looks to be a pretty robust chassis. The drivetrain is pretty solid. I don't see any obvious weaknesses, so I don't think there's going to be a problem with durability. Parts availability, the Fazer Mark II chassis has been out for a while. Like I said earlier, a lot of the parts on this are unique to this rally chassis, but I would imagine a lot of others aren't, and so certainly in Japan at least, getting parts for this shouldn't be a problem. I would say though that if you want to replace the body, I believe what Kyosho called their decoration body set, pre-painted with a decal applied, is actually quite expensive. If memory serves, it's about a third of the cost of the car. You can buy the non-decoration body set unpainted, and you have to do everything yourself. So that's something to bear in mind if you do trash the body. But as I mentioned earlier, Kyosho do include a body mount to mount different manufacturers' bodies onto the chassis, and they do include 2 sets of wheel hubs, so you can adjust the tread, the track of the wheels to match different sized bodies. So if you want to put a body from a different manufacturer on, it's not an issue. So there we go, that's been my less than stellar review of a rally chassis. If there are any corrections, let me know in the comments below, and I would suggest anybody watching this video go read the comments, because there may be corrections, relevant new information, so go check those out. That's all from me. Oh, one last thing before I go, Kyosho RC now has a Facebook page. I joined a few groups and the reception I've got has been amazing, wonderful. So many positive comments and warm words from so many different people. Thank you all so much. It means a lot to me. I'll see you in the next one.